Hi, and welcome back to the Hippie Martha Hormone Hour. I'm Ashley, your host, and today's episode holds very near and dear to my heart as it is October 15th, which is Pregnancy and Infant Loss Remembrance Day. And I wanted to just kind of settle in because this episode, along with the next two episodes, are going to be a little bit more on the serious, sad, emotional side. And because of that, I also want to acknowledge every single parent who has carried love for a baby that they never got to hold. October honors those quiet losses, the invisible grief that so many carry in their bodies and hearts. And so this podcast episode is going to be a little bit different from what you might normally have listened to in the past from me, but I really wanted to create intentionality around this topic because I want you to be seen. I want you to be heard. I want you to be felt. I want to invite you into a moment of just sacred pause. So if you're listening right now, and if you're able to, or maybe later today after you've listened to it, maybe before you go to bed, just find a quiet place where you can place your hand over your heart or light a candle. And I want you to acknowledge that this flame, whether in your hand or in your imagination, is for every baby who did not get to stay, for every body that carried life, even just for a moment, and for every heart that has learned to love through loss. I want to invite you to take 3 slow, deep breaths together. 1 being for grief, 1 for love, and 1 for hope. If you're lighting a candle, you may speak a name, a prayer, whisper a word, or say nothing at all. I want you to know that this silence is for you. It's for your story and for the story that you carry of someone you love. And may the light remind us that we're here, that they mattered, and that they are remembered. So before I begin my story about my loss, I want to gently offer a trigger warning for all 3 episodes, and I will offer it in each episode as well. In this episode, I will be sharing my own miscarriage story and speaking openly about pregnancy loss. If today is not the day for that for you, please honor yourself and pause here. This episode will be waiting for you when and if you are ready. Remember that your nervous system gets to be in charge here. So if this is too much information, or if we've already said too much, I want you to pause because you matter. Okay, let's begin. So I want to start by saying that every loss deserves to be grieved. Whether you are 4 weeks along or are halfway through your pregnancy, it matters. Your loss is real and your grief is valid. I know for a long time I blamed myself. I asked the questions that many of us do. What did I do wrong? Was it something I ate? Was it something that I did? Did I not rest enough? Did I not take enough precautions? Was I not good enough at taking my vitamins and minerals? What was it that caused this loss to happen? So if you've asked yourself those questions too, I want you to hear this with your whole being. It was not your fault. I'm going to be sharing what happens in a miscarriage, how to prevent things, how to go on after a miscarriage, and how to support your body best in the next few episodes. But today, it just felt natural to share my own story with you because I feel that every story has a chance to be shared. And if you've followed me or know me closely, you may already know my story, but sometimes I think we heal by hearing others' stories and knowing that we're not alone. Because when I went through my loss, I felt very, very alone. It happened to everyone. And so it's no big deal, right? And so I just want to acknowledge that it is a big deal and that it does matter. And so when you hear me talking about my story, I just want to share that it makes a difference sharing our stories with one another. So let's begin. While most miscarriages happen early, I carried my second baby all the way to 15 weeks. At the time, I was working as a labor and delivery nurse, and up until that point, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Looking back, I honestly realized that I knew absolutely nothing about my body, my hormones, or how to have a healthy pregnancy or how to create a healthy pregnancy. So when my daughter was roughly 2.5, we decided to try again. After having my IUD removed, soon after I became pregnant again. It didn't take very long, and I was definitely more aware of my body and what pregnancy felt like. At 8 weeks, my midwife did an ultrasound. Being a labor and delivery nurse, I was able to get an early appointment because not all the time do you get an ultrasound at 8 weeks. But for some reason, I just had an inkling that I needed to hear this baby's heartbeat. And unfortunately, when we went in at 8 weeks, I was unable to hear a heartbeat. But my midwife reassured me that it was normal, that sometimes with the positioning and everything, the baby at this stage, sometimes we don't hear the heartbeat this early. And so as time went on, I ended up having all the pregnancy symptoms. My levels came back good. I had lots of nausea, fatigue, sore breasts, bloating, all the things that I had with my first baby. But at around 15 weeks, I started noticing some changes. And it actually happened while I was at work on the labor and delivery floor. I was working a weekend, and I remember it just like yesterday. And so it was Saturday, and I wasn't feeling well. I had just a terrible headache and migraine, and I had gotten migraines before, but never when I was pregnant. And I just felt off. I almost felt like achy, like I was getting sick or the flu. And so one of the residents wrote me a medication that I could take while in pregnancy to help with my migraines. And I ended up getting that filled while I was working at the hospital and took it, got through my shift on Saturday, went home, woke up, didn't have a fever or anything, but still was not feeling well, and ended up going back into work. And I just felt like something was off. And I had a patient for 2 days. I had a long induction. After the migraine wouldn't lift, I started having kind of like period cramps or like just uncomfortable cramping in my stomach. And so I went into the bathroom, and to this day, I still kind of have flashbacks of that moment. But I noticed some spotting. And when I noticed that spotting, my heart sank. And instantly I knew what was happening to my body. Of course, I was still caring for my patient when all of this happened. And so I went to my charge nurse who was on the floor that day, and she instantly grabbed an ultrasound and another nurse and was like, put me in a room. She did a quick ultrasound to see if she could see anything. Because at that time I was roughly 15 weeks. So we should be able to see something on an external ultrasound monitor. But there was nothing. There were 2 large empty sacs. And I remember both of the nurses looking at me, and they said, who's your doctor? And by the grace of God, my midwife's attending doctor was literally on the floor. So they went and they got him. And they said, I was kind of like freaking out and panicking at that moment because I knew something wasn't right. And he said, you know what? I'm not even going to do an ultrasound on you. I want to send you for a formal ultrasound. So he ordered that. I had some nurses taking care of my patient, and I remember them walking me down to radiology for a formal ultrasound and sitting there with the ultrasound tech by myself because my husband, of course, I was at work. Like I wasn't planning any of this. And I just thought in my head, I'm like, this ultrasound tech isn't going to find anything. And I just had tears, just silent tears coming down because I knew she wasn't going to find anything. And so sure enough, she said, I'm so sorry. I will have the results sent to your doctor as soon as possible. Is there anything I can do? So on and so forth. And she ended up walking me back up to the labor and delivery floor that I was working on, and kind of just handed me off to my work family. And my work family, gathered around. They comforted me. They helped me get dressed. They called my husband. They walked me to my car, and I will never forget the love that they showed me that day. The doctor even offered to drive me home and sit with me until my husband could get home, because he was out of town that day because I was working all weekend. And so he had went back home to visit his family, and it was just a wild, I felt like I was living in a dream. And so I got a call that night from the doctor who had cared for me that day. And he said, "Hey, I can get you in for a DNC at this time if you would like to have it. I would highly suggest it just because you are at a later stage in your pregnancy, for a miscarriage, and there can be complications. So if you want it, it's yours." And immediately I just wanted this done and over with. So, and I was still having this terrible headache. I would have probably had to have had emergency surgery if I had not gone in for a DNC, because I was already starting to kind of go septic. So later on, I had asked, during the DNC, I had asked the physician if he would take pictures for me, and just so that I could mourn the loss of my baby. And he refused to do it. He said, "No, Ashley, I'm not doing that for you. You don't need any more trauma. It's just going to make things worse." And I still regret that he never did. But he did tell me what it looked like, and later actually sent it down for pathology, which revealed a triploidy pregnancy, which means that there were 69 chromosomes instead of 46. So we think maybe it was a possible twin pregnancy that just didn't split right, and it was all chromosomal based. We also found out that the baby was a boy, and so we named him Judah. 4 months later, after so much just trials and worry, and I just wanted to be pregnant again, I ended up conceiving again. In exactly 1 year to the day of my DNC, I delivered my rainbow baby, who was also a boy, in the same hospital room where I had been caring for my patient the day I miscarried. It's kind of crazy how it goes full circle. Because those 4 months of waiting were filled with so much fear. It's so much trauma that stayed with me in ways that I didn't expect. One of them was I couldn't even use the same bathroom where I had seen the spotting until I had grown and felt my baby move. I couldn't care for patients that were like myself that had had a loss, because it kept triggering me back to the day of the loss of my own baby. I also had some family and friends totally gaslight me and say, "Oh, it happens to everyone," or "Join the club. You can have more. Don't worry about it." Or it just wasn't meant to be. It wasn't God's timing for that baby. And those words really cut deeply for me. I vowed never to say those words to another grieving parent, because while my story eventually held hope, that is not true for everyone. So what I've learned since that moment is that miscarriage is often not random, that there are root causes, and some of those root causes could be low progesterone, poorly timed conception, short luteal phases, thyroid or adrenal dysfunction, vaginal microbiome imbalances, and in my instance, it was egg and sperm quality, which affected chromosomal abnormalities. Many of these issues are preventable, but they are rarely discussed in a doctor's office. When I went back to my doctor and asked him why, even with the biopsy results, he just said, "I don't know. There's no reason, it just happens." And I wasn't satisfied with that answer. And by the time you were already in crisis, you were often just told, "Just try again," without being given answers or things to do to improve your outcomes. And that's where fertility awareness helped me to understand and help others change this outcome. When we chart your cycles together, we're not just tracking dates and getting an accurate due date or a positive pregnancy test. We're actually gathering data. Your chart can reveal so many red flags long before a positive test. It's like an early warning system for pregnancy health. Things like spotting before your period, short luteal phases, low temps that drop too soon. All of those things can point to low progesterone or luteal phase defects, which can cause miscarriage. This is exactly why I do what I do. No woman should have to walk through loss in the dark without answers or without support. And while I know that I had a lot of support given my privileges as a labor and delivery nurse, I definitely did not receive the education that I needed to understand why things were happening. So in my next episodes, I'm going to be diving deeper into different types of miscarriages and loss and what affects them, as well as doing a really deep dive into progesterone and what it does, how to advocate for proper testing and support, and how to make sure that you have all of the things you need in order to have a healthy pregnancy. So definitely make sure that you're subscribed and notifications are turned on so that you can listen to those episodes as well. If this is your story or you feel very similar or can relate to it, I want you to know that 1, you are not broken. 2, you are not alone. And 3, that there is hope. Whether your path leads to another pregnancy, adoption, I want you to be able to learn how to identify risks and strengthen your chances for a healthy pregnancy. And I would be honored to walk alongside you, especially if you have endured multiple losses. You can reach out to me through my link in my bio or find me on Instagram at the Hippie Martha. If this episode touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs to feel less alone today. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time, we'll see you soon.